Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and once again you're listening to the voice of the American Dissident, and I'm your host, Jeffrey Whittla. For a century now, the United States has been under an economic siege. With the inception of the Federal Reserve System and the Income Tax Act, perception of a free economy is a total lie and a total sham. For the first hour of this broadcast, I am going to replay a broadcast from the man who woke me up, Mr. William Cooper, and this broadcast was on the air almost 10 years ago to the day. Pay close attention to every word that he says, ladies and gentlemen. And after this broadcast, the replay is finished, we are going to go to a blog that I frequently visit, and we are going to go through as much of that as possible, because what Mr. Cooper predicted 10 years ago parallels exactly what is happening today. And I'm going to format this a little bit so it's easy for the screen. And we are going to play this broadcast, and please pay attention and listen very carefully, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome, folks, to the hour of the time, the only hour that ever was or ever will be. This is the most important hour in your entire life, for during this hour you will decide your future and thus our collective futures. I am your host, William Cooper. From the headquarters of the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, former banker and financial analyst Michael William Haga, author of the forthcoming book, On the Brink, How to Survive the Coming Great Depression, 1993 to 2000, says, within the next 12 months, the international banking system will collapse. The world's stock exchanges will crash to pre-World War II levels. Real estate values will plunge 85% or more, and countless numbers of ordinary people worldwide will be left holding the bag. Our intelligence network tells us that this is most probable. Not very good news, is it? Well, folks, the subject of this program tonight is how did we get to this point in history where the greatest nation in the history of the world is on the brink of total and final economic collapse. You're going to be amazed at what you're going to learn this hour. Many of you are going to be shocked, surprised, and some of you are going to be, in fact, I think the great majority of you are going to be ashamed of yourselves. Why is it that our schools teach our children nothing about money, economics? Why is it that we know as a people literally nothing about the monetary system and the economic system that our country operates under? How is it that most Americans believe that a private corporation known as the Federal Reserve Bank is an agency of the United States government when it is not? How is it that we write checks to the Internal Revenue Service believing that we are paying taxes and we are not? Why is it that in the nation with the most opportunity, the greatest affluence that the world has ever known, what used to be, is not now, but what used to be the best educational system on the face of this earth, with a constitution that guarantees each individual equality and freedom, what has happened, dear listeners? Well, in the next 50 or so minutes, you're going to find out. And when you find out, I want each and every one of you to hang your heads in shame. For we have not been invaded by the evil empire or some foreign army. No one has breached our shores. We have been destroyed from within, mostly by our own apathy, ignorance, and abdication of responsibility. And just as the Roman Empire once fell for the same reasons, we are in the process of falling into the abyss. And Americans, I can tell you right now, if they do not wake up and turn the tide, they will be relegated to slavery as indentured servants to world bankers who will foreclose on the debt. A debt that at this moment we cannot repay by any means whatsoever. Let's go to the United States Constitution, the supreme law of this land. In it, we can get at the very root of the problem that confronts us today, or in examining this document, we find that we are not conforming to the law. In Article 1, Section 8, it says, counterfeit dollar does not conform to the definition of what our money is in the Constitution, and thus is illegal. How did they get away with this? The Federal Reserve Bank was established in 1914 after a meeting in 1913 on an island called Jekyll Island by some of the wealthiest bankers in this nation, representing, I might add, European banking interests. And they conned the Congress of the United States into forming a central bank. Not a central bank owned and operated by the United States government, folks. A privately owned corporation called the Federal Reserve as the central bank of the United States of America. The Federal Reserve Act exempted this private corporation from paying income taxes and made it against the law to audit them. They have never, ever been audited, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, folks, if they were to be audited, you would find out that this country has literally been stolen from us. Because here's how the Federal Reserve Bank operates. There are two ways of stealing money from the American people. Actually, three ways. The first is that if the United States needs money, let's say, they print up $1,001 bills. The Federal Reserve then agrees to loan the United States $1,000. They buy those $1,001 bills from the United States Treasury, where it was printed, for just a little over $20. That's the printing cost, and there's no profit built into that. And then they turn around and loan those dollars to the United States of America. You see, the money never existed. They don't open a bank vault and take out $8,000 and loan it to the United States of America. No, sir. They make a bookkeeping entry. They create this money out of thin air. It never existed before in the history of the world. They then pay the United States Treasury a little over $20 for each $1,000 in $1 bills that is printed, or they just issue the money to the United States as a loan in the form of credit without printing any money. They then loan this money to the United States of America in the form of Federal Reserve notes. And then, to guarantee that the United States will pay them back, the United States gives them a $1,000 Treasury bond, which pays interest to the Federal Reserve bankers. Now, I don't know about you, but I call this theft. You see, what they have done, folks, is just pocketed approximately $980 that they never had before. Plus, they're going to pocket the interest that they're going to earn on that $1,000 Treasury bond above and beyond the $1,000 that we have to pay them back. So they have literally stolen from the people of the United States of America approximately $980 plus the interest from the Treasury bond. The United States Treasury, in return, has received just a little over $20 for the printing of those $1,001 bills, and that includes no profit. This is highway robbery. This is despicable. This is what has happened to this country. I'm going to explain a few things to you now, folks, that you probably never knew. That's the first way that they steal money from the people of the United States of America. The second way that they steal it is through the repayment of the loan with the interest that was never created. You see, if the interest was never created, it has to come from somewhere. Where does it come from? From the sweat and the tears and the labor and the resources of the American people. It comes out of your substance. It's the same as if I had $1 and I loan 10 cents to 10 people, each at 10% simple interest over 1 year's period, which means they must pay me back each 11 cents. But you see, in this little world that I've created here, there's only $1. That's all that exists. And I have loaned that dollar out to these 10 people who had no money before. Now, each one has 10 cents. Yet each one of them has to pay me back 11 cents. Now that equals $1.10, folks. How are they going to pay me back 11 cents each if all that exists in this whole world is $1? One of them has to go down the tubes in order to furnish the interest for the others to pay. That's how it works, folks. One of them has to go down the tubes in order for the others to pay back their money with interest. Either that, or I create out of thin air some more money so that the one who isn't doing so well can borrow more money from me. That puts more money out there. And the byproduct of that transaction is inflation, and everybody gets just a little bit poorer so that they can pay it back. But it requires that somebody always owes somebody else money, and it requires that the debt always escalate in order that the theft of the money not be found out, that the people don't find out that I'm creating this money that I'm loaning them out of thin air. Now, also there has to be a measure. There has to be a measure to remove some of this money from circulation constantly, because the constant creation of money that never existed before and putting it into circulation will create rampant, unbelievable inflation if there is not some way, some measure to ensure that some of that money is taken out of circulation. And to do this, I create an organization which is a collection agency to collect the debt that the people owe me. And in real life, this is called the Internal Revenue Service, which is also a private corporation incorporated in the state of Delaware. Didn't know that, did you, folks? Go get your checks that you used to pay your taxes with, the check that you wrote. If you didn't owe any taxes, you didn't write a check, so you can't do this. But if you owed some taxes and you wrote a check, and you paid your taxes with this check, go get that check out of your records, look on the back of it, and you'll see that the check that you thought that went to the United States Treasury did not. On the back there's a rubber stamp that says pay any FRB. That means Federal Reserve Bank. And then it says in payment of OBLIG, in payment of US OBLIG. That means in payment of the United States obligation. Obligation to who? To the Federal Reserve. You see, what's happening is the Internal Revenue Service is not depositing your taxes that you pay, that you think you're paying, into the United States Treasury. It is going directly to the Federal Reserve Bank and then out of this country to prevent the American people from realizing that money is being created out of thin air, and that our wealth, our natural resources, our nation, our substance, our people, our property is being stolen from us because, folks, you're going to hear it here for the first time if you've never heard it before in your life. The national debt can never be repaid. Never. And all of this is why I laughed so hard when George Bush made the suggestion that we put a box on our income tax forms that we could check if we wanted a portion of our taxes to go to pay off the national debt. What a joke. And so many people swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. You see, all your taxes go to the Federal Reserve Bank, and the national debt can never be repaid. Never. Never. And because of that, at some future date, and I believe that that date is very soon, is just around the corner, just barely over the horizon, the world bankers are going to demand payment of the money that we owe them, and we don't have any money to pay them. The United States will be forced to declare bankruptcy, and the bankers will foreclose on the debt. You see, there's no way we can ever pay it back, because none of the interest was ever created. And the only real amount of money that the Federal Reserve ever loaned to the United States was $100 inception of the Federal Reserve. The interest on that debt alone is over $27,000 over the years. The rest of the money that we have borrowed from the Federal Reserve never, ever existed. And that's why it was written in the law and insisted upon that the Federal Reserve would not have to pay income tax and would never be subject to audit. Congress gave away the nation. They were traitors. The Congress that passed the Federal Reserve Act were traitors, for they ensured the destruction of this nation and the enslavement of its people by passing that act. For they knew that this money would be created out of thin air, and they also knew that if the United States established its own bank, we could create United States notes backed by the good faith and credit of the United States of America, which would not be interest-bearing. But they didn't do that. No, they created a central bank owned by private people, a private corporation, that has been stealing this country ever since. You see, shortly after that happened, in about 1938, the United States declared bankruptcy once already. When they declared that bankruptcy, in order to become solvent again, they pledged against the loan the entire resources of the United States of America, which includes all property, all natural resources, and the only thing in the world that has the ability to create wealth, its people. So the next bankruptcy will accomplish the following, folks. All property in the United States will be seized as collateral for the debt of the United States, including all natural resources, all real property, real estate, all consumable goods, which are stereos, TVs, food, anything, everything. The corporations know this, and that's why they're all leaving the country. And the people of the United States, the citizens, will become indentured to the international bankers for however long it takes to repay the loan. Well, put that in your pipe and smoke it. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this pause. But these people will fall into a trap, you see, because in order to continue living, they must continue borrowing. And continue borrowing ensures the fact that they will never pay back the debt, and they will be slaves in the New World Order forever. Those of you who have called my hotline in Los Angeles and wondered why I kept tagging on to the end, And this is exactly what my hotline says, folks. By the way, that number is area code 310-281-8222. 310-281-8222. At the end of the messages that I leave there, I always make this statement. Quote, "For those of you who are helping me in this fight, God bless you. For the rest of you, you're going to get exactly what you deserve. You're going to be slaves in the New World Order." Unquote. This was not an arbitrary statement by me. It is a statement of fact. When the United States government is forced to declare bankruptcy, and it will be forced to declare bankruptcy, and all of you are thinking about our children are going to pay back the national debt, or their children, or their great-great-grandchildren, it can never happen, folks. It can never happen. Because it's not just the government. You see, every time the government borrows, it has to pay back interest. And every time each one of you borrow, you have to pay back interest that was never, ever in the history of the world created. It doesn't exist. And are you ready for this? There's a third way that they've been stealing from us. You see, it's called fractional reserve lending. The Federal Reserve Bank allows fractional reserve lending. What this means is they can lend out as much as 10 to 1 or more based upon funds held in reserve. So a Federal Reserve Bank could, if they wanted to, and they do want to, and they do it frequently and have done it often, and it has resulted in a terrible thing. Say a Federal Reserve Bank has $1,000 on account in reserve. Now remember, this is not even real money. It's the fiat Federal Reserve notes to begin with, counterfeit. This bank can now loan out $10,000 as a bookkeeping entry, which it doesn't even have, and it's issued in the form of credit against the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, let's say they want to raise their assets in reserve so that they can loan out more money. They merely require the person that they loan this money to keep that money on deposit in their bank. So if they loan him $10,000, only $1,000 really exists now, and that's fiat Federal Reserve notes, the counterfeit money. They require him to redeposit or to deposit this $10,000 in their bank. So he does this. They now have, as a bookkeeping entry, $11,000 as assets deposited in that bank. They can now loan out $110,000 against that $11,000 in assets. And again, if they want to be able to have more on reserve to loan out, all they have to do is require that whoever laid the loan the $110,000 to redeposit it in the same bank. And now folks, they can loan out $1,100,000 based upon an original reserve of $1,000. And this has been compounded so much over the entire Federal Reserve System that I'm going to tell you right now, there is no money in the banks. Our banks are insolvent. Over the last year, over 500 banks have folded. Just in the last year. The entire savings and loan system has crumbled. Now, you think your deposits are safe because of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC? And you think your deposits are safe because of the FDSLI? Well, they're not, folks. And those are not agencies of the United States government either. You've all been fooled. You think because it says federal that it's an arm of the government and it's backed by the government and you can't lose your money? You're wrong. You know you can, but you will lose your money. You're going to. It doesn't matter what you do. And if all that you can think of is saving your assets, I can guarantee you you're going to lose your ass. And I don't mean the four-legged one out in the barnyard, folks. The only way to save your assets is to save the Constitution, is to force the traitors who are sitting in Congress to audit the Federal Reserve. And the only answer to this entire problem, I can guarantee you, is to nationalize the Federal Reserve, declare all of those who have had a hand in the ownership or the creation of the Federal Reserve to be criminals, arrest them, seize all of their assets, and issue United States notes, non-interest notes, while we build up our reserves of gold and silver so that we can once again mint constitutional money. If we are not willing to do this, if we will not do it, then we are doomed. And there is no way out other than what I have just told you. And I'm the only one in this country who's got the guts to tell it to you, because anyone else who's ever tried has been murdered. Murdered by these creeps. And they all belong to secret societies. It is not a Jewish plot, it is not a Catholic plot, it is not a plot by the blacks, or the Poles, or the Protestants, or anyone else. These men belong to secret societies. And this problem is as old as man. You see, the first international bankers ever in this world were known as the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar were rounded up in France only and arrested by King Philip. On November the 22nd in the year 1307, Pope Clement V issued a papal bull condemning the Knights Templars to torture. That's the same date of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, which is on the 33rd parallel, by the way. Dealey Plaza is on the 33rd parallel. In Dealey Plaza, there's a plaque commemorating the location of the first Masonic temple in the state of Texas. And he was shot once in the back at the approximate location of the heart, in the throat, and in the head, the exact same wounds suffered by Hiram Abiff in the Masonic initiations. If you visit Dealey Plaza, you will see the four quarters of a Celtic temple and an obelisk with a flame on the top. These are all the symbols of an outdoor temple of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the worship of an ancient religion, Baal, the light, the sun, Lucifer, Osiris, Satan, all the same. Kennedy was in the process of printing United States notes. Freemasonry was infiltrated and taken over by the Knights Templars as they fled the persecution of the Pope and the kings of Europe. The international bankers today are the Knights Templars, folks. And the arm through which they operate is Freemasonry, the Rosicrucians, the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, and many other organizations which appear to be outwardly fraternal organizations existing for the good of the community, but I can assure you they are not. This country is being destroyed from within by those who belong to these secret societies. And if you doubt this, folks, if you doubt this, if you don't understand what I'm telling you, and if you're not willing to go look to find out if it's true, if you're not willing to study, the destruction of this country and the enslavement of its people are a certainty, and it is now imminent. Imminent. Stop fighting each other. Stop fighting each other. You must understand who the enemy is. You must understand what we have to do to stop what's coming. You must begin to learn about real economics and real money, and you have to understand that no matter what they do to the price of oil, it will never result in inflation. Inflation is not caused by raising or lowering the price of anything, folks. Inflation is caused by flooding the economy with money. Worthless paper. Worthless paper. Making more money available in the form of loans, in the form of credit, in the form of cash, by running the printing presses, and that is what causes inflation. And it was an intentional inflation, according to their plan, to put both parents to work so that the children would be relegated to government-controlled daycare centers where they are taught how to live in the New World Order. You'd better wake up, folks. We are in real trouble now. The only answer is to audit the Federal Reserve, nationalize the Federal Reserve, prosecute all who were connected with its formation and with its ownership as criminals, traitors. If any people or any nation objects or resists, we must back this up with the full force of our military might. And believe me, if we can do this, every nation in this world will thank us for taking us out from under the yoke of these secret societies. And only then will our economy improve. Only then will we be able to eliminate the debt by decree, because it is based upon fraud, upon theft, and begin again. If we do not do this, I'm going to say this once again, we are doomed. There is no way out of this other than what I have just told you. There is no way that anyone in this country can ever pay back the national debt, because the interest was never created. And the debt itself was created out of thin air, never existed, is fraud. Fraud. You see, we could have printed that kind of money ourselves and never owed ourselves anything, and would never have had to pay any interest on what we owed ourselves. Now let me acquaint you with another fact. There is very little, if any, gold in Fort Knox. It was all sold at a discount during the Nixon administration, and only insiders were ever told that the sale would take place. It was sold at a discount from $32 an ounce on the world gold market, when at the time the price of gold was well over $100 an ounce. The American people were never told, never had a chance to buy any of that gold, and the people who bought it at a discount from $32 an ounce made a handsome profit at the expense of the people of this country. What are they guarding at Fort Knox? They're guarding the secret that there's no gold. That's what they're guarding. Folks, I have taken great risk in bringing you this information tonight, because no other media personality, talk show host, or broadcast station has the guts to tell you what I just told you. And if it actually goes out over the air and stays out over the air, I'll consider myself very lucky. And if I stay alive after you hear this broadcast, I will be even luckier. But the chances are that no action will be taken against me, simply because it will prove that everything that I've said in this broadcast is absolutely 100% correct. I want you to make tapes of this broadcast and send them to everyone that you know. If you don't have a tape recorder, you may order tapes of this broadcast, studio quality tapes. Tapes are $7.50 for CAGI members, $17.50 for non-CAGI members. That's $7.50 for CAGI members, $17.50 for non-CAGI members. That includes postage and handling. You can order them by writing to me, William Cooper, Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. That's Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. And while you're at it, folks, you better take advantage of our membership offer for CAGI. That's the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence. That is the intelligence network that brings you the material that is included in each one of these programs. The Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence is a group of citizens who wish to save the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, this nation, and thus freedom for the world. For if this country falls, all freedom worldwide will fall with it, and man will cease to exist as a sovereign, free, individual, king in his own right, with a government as his chattel servant, and will once again be relegated to the position of someone else's property. The membership fee, folks, is $45. That's $45 membership fee for CAGI, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence. With membership, you get a certificate, an identification card, which you can use for discounts at my workshops or lectures as I travel around this country. You'll also get a newsletter. You'll have access to our computer bulletin board system and all of the research files that are included in that database. We're going to have many other benefits for our members, and we will be lobbying Congress constantly, representing our members, to make sure that freedom reigns in this world and not despotism, which is coming. If you'd like to join the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, CAGI, send $45 to William Cooper, Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. That's Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, spelled V as in Victor, E-R-D-E, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. Or you can just call Stan on the phone and ask him to send you a packet of information. His number is 602-567-6109. That's Stan at 602-567-6109. Please call him during normal daylight hours. Also, I recommend that you order my book, Behold a Pale Horse. It's 500 pages of the most suppressed, most documented suppressed information ever printed in the history of the world, and I've been told this by experts. Without this book, you're going to be crippled in the coming months and years. This will tell you everything, why it's happening, who is doing it, what the plan is, when all of this is going to take place, and it is fully documented, and you need it. You need this book. It's taken me most of my life to gather this information and put it into a book. And I'm working on my second book now, which I can't give you a publication date yet. But if you'd like to purchase Behold a Pale Horse, if you're a CAGI member, send $25. That includes postage and handling. If you're not a CAGI member, send $30. That includes postage and handling. To William Cooper, Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. That's Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. By the way, folks, my book is the only book in the world that I know of that's fully guaranteed. If you get that book and you decide that's not what you wanted for your money, send it right back to us in the same condition you received it in, brand new, and we'll refund your money, no questions asked. Now, if you send us a used book, or if it's been read, or the cover's been crinkled back, or pages turned down, we will not. You will get the book right back. But remember, it's guaranteed. If you take a look at it when you get it, if it's not what you want, you send it directly back to us in brand new condition, and we will refund your money cheerfully. Let me read to you again the little news article that we read at the beginning of this show. Former banker and financial analyst Michael William Haga, author of the forthcoming book, On the Brink, How to Survive the Coming Great Depression, 1993 to 2000, says this: Within the next 12 months, the international banking system will collapse. The world stock exchanges will crash to pre-World War II levels. Real estate values will plunge 85% or more, and countless numbers of ordinary people worldwide will be left holding the bag. The United States will be left in the position of forced bankruptcy. The real property, the resources, the natural resources, and the people who create the resources in the United States of America will simply be foreclosed upon, and we will become indentured to the world banking system, to the New World Order. We will be slaves, folks. This is coming. Anyone with any sense, with any understanding of economics, with finances, with the kind of situation that we are really in, and not what George Herbert Walker Bush or his ilk tell you. If you understand all of these things, you know this is coming. You know it. And don't let yourself be fooled by this insane assertion that we're in the midst of a recovery, because that is a lie. And there's only one way to save ourselves, and that's the way that I have outlined during this program tonight. There is no other way. Now, folks, I want you all to realize that we're not trying to scare you by bringing you this information. We have looked at this in every way possible, and this is the only answer that we can find. We've been living in fantasy land. Now, if you can come up with better answers or a better solution, please write to me and let me know. And if it checks out, we'll put it on the air. But this is the way we see it right now, and this is the way our intelligence organization, CAGI, also sees it. It doesn't look good. But we can save ourselves, and we can save this country if we wake up now and do something about it. We must nationalize the Federal Reserve. We must prosecute all those connected with the Federal Reserve and the Internal Revenue Service as criminals. We must confiscate all of their property and all of their wealth and give it to the Treasury of the United States. We must print United States notes while we build up our reserves of gold and silver, so once again we can mint constitutional money. Now, this is one time, folks, that I can tell you sincerely that I hope that I am wrong. I hope that our intelligence network that has given this information is wrong, but it doesn't look that way. And we can't hide from this either, folks. As George Bush would say, read my lips, New World Order. Good night, and God bless each and every one of you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The predictions that William Cooper made some 10 years ago are coming to pass. I would just ask my listeners, are you liking the price of gasoline? Are you liking the price of groceries? Are you liking the price of that new pickup truck that you have to buy? When he broadcasted this some 10 years ago, the national debt was around $3 trillion. Today, in the year 2013, the national debt is $16 trillion, ladies and gentlemen. There has been a call by some to give the President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, unlimited authority to raise the debt ceiling. Look at the price of gold on the market today. It's $1,800 an ounce, give or take. And it is projected, ladies and gentlemen, to hit some $5,000 to $8,000 an ounce in the next few years. At the price you pay for gasoline now, with gold at $1,800 an ounce, think of what you will be paying for gasoline, if gold does indeed hit some $5,000 an ounce. There will be no reasonable or logical way that you will be able to afford to live. And as Mr. William Cooper said, we will be indentured servants and slaves in the New World Order. And a reminder, the addresses, the telephone numbers that he gave in his broadcast are defunct. I would direct you to his website, which is still up and running and managed by his assistant, Mr. Doyle Shamley, www.williamcooper.com, and you can contact them if you're interested in any information that they have. To prove to you that his predictions are coming true, there is a website that I frequently visit to check certain things, and I'm going to bring this up here on the screen, and I'm going to just get these arrows situated a little bit, and we're going to go to the screen, and I'll hit 3D so my face is here and I'm interacting with you. This is the economiccollapseblog.com. We're going to go to an article that they have here. We're going to start out, watch the financial markets in Europe. And I'm going to go to read more so we can go there, and we are going to talk and read the whole article. And I'm going to bring this down. We're going to go in a little bit, zoom in a little bit so we can make it easier for the viewers to see. And again, this is called Watch the Financial Markets in Europe. Is the financial system of Europe on the verge of a meltdown? I have always maintained that the next wave of the economic crisis would begin in Europe, and right now the situation in Europe is unraveling at a frightening pace. On Monday, European stocks had their worst day in over 6 months, and over the past 4 days, we have seen the euro-US dollar decline by the most that it has in nearly 7 months. Meanwhile, scandals are erupting all over the continent. A political scandal in Spain, a derivative scandal in Italy, and banking scandals all over the Eurozone are seriously shaking confidence in the system. If things move much farther in a negative direction, we could be facing a full-blown financial crisis in Europe very rapidly. So watch the financial markets in Europe very carefully. Yes, most Americans tend to ignore Europe because they are convinced that the U.S. is, quote, the center of the universe, unquote. But the truth is that Europe actually has a bigger population than we do. They have a bigger economy than we do. And they have a much larger banking system than we do. The global financial system is more integrated today than it ever has been before. And if there is a major stock market crash in Europe, it is going to deeply affect the United States and the rest of the globe as well. So pay close attention to what is going on in Europe, because events over there could spark a chain reaction that would have very serious implications for every man, woman, and child on the planet. As noted above, European markets started off the week very badly, and things certainly have not improved since then. The following is, excuse me ladies and gentlemen, I gotta reformat this a little bit. As noted above, European markets started off the week very badly, and things have certainly not improved since then. The following is how Zero Hedge summarized what happened on Thursday. Euro stocks, Europe's Dow closed today minus 1% for 2013. France, Germany, and Spain are all lower on the year now. Italy, following ENI CEO fraud, collapsed almost 3% from U.S. day session open, leaving it up less than 1% for the year. Just as we argued, credit markets have been warning that all is not well, and today's afternoon free fall begins the catch down. In addition, the euro has been dropping like a rock all of a sudden, Just check out this chart which shows what happened to the euro on Thursday. It is very rare to see the euro move that dramatically. So what is causing all of this? Well, we already know that the economic fundamentals in Europe are absolutely horrible. Unemployment in the Eurozone is at a record high, and the unemployment rates in both Greece and Spain are over 26%. These are depression-level numbers. But up until now, there had been a tremendous amount of confidence in the European financial system. But now that confidence is being shaken by a whole host of scandals. In recent days, a number of major banking scandals have begun to emerge all over Europe. Just check out this article which summarizes many of them. One of the worst banking scandals is in Italy. A horrible derivatives scandal has pushed the third largest bank in Italy to the verge of collapse. Monte dei Paschi di Siena, Italy's third biggest lender, said on Wednesday losses linked to the three problematic derivative trades totaled 730 million euros, or 988.3 American dollars, as it sought to draw a line under a scandal over risky financial transactions. There is that word derivative that I keep telling people to watch for. Of course, this is not the big derivatives panic that I have been talking about, but it is an example of how these toxic financial instruments can bring down even the biggest banks. Monte dei Paschi is the oldest bank in the world, and now the only way it is able to survive is with government bailouts. Another big scandal that is shaking up Europe right now is happening over in Spain. It is being alleged that Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy and other members of his party have been receiving illegal cash payments. The following summary of the scandal comes from a recent Bloomberg article. On January 31st, the Spanish newspaper El País published copies of what it said were the ledgers from secret accounts held by Luis Bárcenas, the former treasurer of the ruling People's Party, which revealed the existence of a party slush fund. The newspaper said 7.5 million euros in corporate donations were channeled into the fund and allegedly doled out from 1997 to 2009 to senior party members, including Rajoy. That doesn't sound good at all. So what is the truth? Could Rajoy actually be innocent? Well, at this point, most of the population of Spain does not believe that this is the case. Just check out the following poll numbers from the Bloomberg article quoted above. According to Metroscopia poll, 76% of Spaniards don't believe the People's Party's denials of the slush fund allegations. Even more damning, 58% of the party supporters think it's lying. All of the Spanish businessmen with whom I discussed the latest scandal expect it to get worse before it gets better. Their assumption that there are more skeletons in the government's closet indicates what little trust they have in their leaders. Meanwhile, the underlying economic fundamentals in Europe just continue to get worse. One of the biggest concerns right now is France. Just check out this excerpt from a recent report by Phoenix Capital Research. The house of cards that is Europe is close to collapsing as the widely held responsible for solving the crisis. Prime ministers, treasurers, and ECB head Mario Draghi have all been recently implicated in corruption scandals. These EU leaders who have yet to be implicated in scandals are not faring much better than their more corrupt counterparts. In France, Socialist Prime Minister François Hollande has proven yet again that socialism doesn't work by chasing after the wealthy and trying to grow France's public sector, when the public sector already accounts for 56% of French employment. France was already suffering from a lack of competitiveness. Now that the wealthy business people are fleeing the country, meaning the investments will dry up, the economy has begun to positively implode, ladies and gentlemen. As the report goes on to mention, over the past few months, the economic numbers coming out of France have been absolutely frightful. Auto sales for 2012 fell 13% from those of 2011. Sales of existing homes outside of Paris fell 20% year over year for the third quarter of 2012. New home sales fell 25%. Even the high-end real estate markets are collapsing, with sales for apartments in Paris that cost over 2 million euros collapsing an incredible 42% in 2012. Today, the jobless rate in France is at a 15-year high, and industrial production is headed into the toilet. The wealthy are fleeing France in droves because of the recent tax increases, and the nation is absolutely drowning in debt. Even the French jobs minister recently admitted that France is essentially bankrupt at this point. France's government was plunged into an embarrassing role yesterday after a minister said the country was totally bankrupt. Employment Secretary Michael Sapin said cuts were needed to put the damaged economy back on track. There is a state, but it is totally bankrupt state, he said. So what does all of this mean? It means that the crisis in Europe is just beginning. Things are going to be getting a lot worse. Perhaps that is one reason why corporate insiders are dumping so much stock right now, as I noted in my article yesterday entitled "Do Wall Street Insiders Expect Something Really Big to Happen Very Soon?" There are a whole host of signs that both the United States and Europe are heading for recession, and a lot of financial experts are warning that stocks are way overdue for a correction. For example, Blackstone's Byron Wien told CNBC the other day that he expects the S&P to drop by 200 points during the first half of 2013. Seabreeze Partners portfolio manager Doug Cass recently told CNBC that what is happening right now in the financial markets very much reminds him of the stock market crash of 1987. I'm getting that summer of 1987 feeling in the U.S. equity market, Cass told CNBC, which means we're headed for a sharp fall. Toward the end of 2012 and at the very beginning of 2013, we saw markets both in the U.S. and Europe move up steadily, even though the underlying economic fundamentals did not justify such a move. In many ways, that move up reminded me of the head fakes that we have seen prior to many of the largest market corrections of the past. Often financial markets are at their most euphoric just before a crash hits, so get ready. Even if you don't have a penny in the financial markets, now is the time to prepare for what is ahead. We all need to learn from what Europe is going through right now. In Greece, formerly middle-class citizens are now trampling one another for food. We all need to prepare financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically so that we can weather the economic storm that is coming. Most Americans are accustomed to living paycheck to paycheck and being constantly up to their eyeballs in debt, but that is incredibly foolish. Even in the animal kingdom, animals work hard during the warm months to prepare for the winter months. Even so, we should all be working very hard to prepare during prosperous times so that we will have something stored up for the lean years that are coming. Unfortunately, events in Europe are any indication we may be rapidly running out of time. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are rapidly running out of time, because I happen to believe that in order to disarm the American people, they will use a double-edged sword. They will, ladies and gentlemen, collapse the economy of the United States, just as Bill Cooper predicted some 10 years ago. They will collapse the economy. They will collapse the economy, ladies and gentlemen, in order to bring about their new world order. It's inevitable that they will do this. Recent articles that I have found on the net states quite clearly that President Barack Hussein Obama plans to quote-unquote kill the U.S. dollar. They plan on replacing the U.S. dollar with what is known as the Amero. There are proposals in the Canadian Parliament, the Mexican Parliament, and the United States Senate to create the North American Union, and that is exactly what they will do. They will create the North American Union, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to go to another article in which I find a very informative blog, The Economic Collapse, www.economiccollapseblog.com. the economiccollapseblog.com, and we are going to go to another article in this blog. We're going to read it. And we are going to go to the screen and 3D mix again so I can interact with you, and we are going to talk, and we are going to read this blog. We're going to read this article out of this blog. Oh, and unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, my computer is getting a little slow. We're going to go back up here, and we're going to go down. And the title of this article on this blog is, "Do Wall Street Insiders Expect Something Really Big to Happen Very Soon?" Why are corporate insiders dumping huge numbers of shares in their own companies right now? Why are some very large investors suddenly making gigantic bets that the stock market will crash at some point in the next 60 days? Do Wall Street insiders expect something really big to happen very soon? Do they know something that we do not know? What you are about to read below is startling. Every time that the market has fallen in recent years, insiders have been able to get out ahead of time. David Coleman of the Vickers Weekly Insider Report recently noted that Wall Street insiders have shown a remarkable ability of late to identify both market peaks and troughs. That is why it is so alarming that corporate insiders are selling 9 times as many shares as they are buying right now. In addition, some extraordinarily large bets have just been made that will only pay off if the financial markets in the U.S. crash by the end of April. So what does all of this mean? Well, it could mean absolutely nothing, or it could mean that there are people out there that actually have insider knowledge that a market crash is coming. Evaluate the evidence below and decide for yourself. For some reason, ladies and gentlemen, for some reason, corporate insiders have chosen this moment to unload huge amounts of stock. According to a CNN article, corporate insiders are now selling 9 times more of their own shares than they are buying. Corporate insiders have one word for investors: sell. Insiders were 9 times more likely to sell shares of their companies than buy new ones last week, according to the Vickers Weekly Insider Report by Argus Research. What makes this so alarming is that corporate insiders have been exceedingly good at timing the market in recent years. The following comes from a recent CNBC article entitled "Sucker Alert: Insider Selling Surges After Dow 14,000." In an almost perfect coordination with an equity market that was rushing toward new all-time highs, insider sentiment has weakened sharply, falling to its lowest level since late March 2012, wrote David Coleman of the Vickers Weekly Insider Report, one of the longest researchers of executive buying and selling on Wall Street. Insiders are waving the cautionary flag in an increasingly aggressive manner. There have been more than 9 insider sales for every 1 buyer over the past week among New York Stock Exchange stocks, according to Vickers. The last time executives sold their company's stock this aggressively was in early 2012, just before the Standard & Poor's 500 went on to correct by 10% to its low for the year. Insiders know more than the vast majority of market participants, said Enos Tainer, global macro editor for riskreversal.com, and they're usually right over a long period of time. There are other indications that the stock market may be headed for a significant tumble in the months ahead. For example, as a Zero Hedge article recently pointed out, the last time that the financial markets in the U.S. were as euphoric as they are now was right before the financial crisis of 2008. As I mentioned above, some people out there have recently made some absolutely jaw-dropping bets against stocks, which will only pay off if there is a financial crash at some point in the next few months. According to Business Insider, the recent purchase of 100,000 put options by a mystery investor has a lot of people on Wall Street talking. According to Barron's columnist Stephen Sears, someone made a big bet against the financials ETF yesterday, and it has everybody buzzing. The trader bought 100,000 put options on the ETF. A put option increases in value when the price of the underlying asset, in this case the ETF, goes down. To put that number in perspective, Sears writes, few investors ever trade more than 500 contracts, so a 100,000 order tends to stop traffic and prompt all sorts of speculation about what's motivating the trade. According to Sears, the trade has sparked conversations across the market. Reportedly, these put options expire in April. And as Art Cashin of UBS has noted, there was also another extremely large bet that was placed recently that is banking on a financial crash within the next 2 months. A very big bet in a somewhat unlikely instrument, my friend Jim Brown, the ever-alert consummate professional over at Option Investor, pointed us to a rather unusual trade. Here's what he wrote in last night's edition of his valuable newsletter. In past years, I have reported on trades that were so large it appeared someone had inside knowledge of a pending event. Sometimes these were massive put positions on the S&P. A new trade just appeared that suggests there will be a market event in the near future. Last week, somebody put on a call spread on the VIX using the April 20th and 25th puts. They bought 150,000 contracts for a net of $75 per contract. That is an $11,250,000 bet that the VIX will move over 20 over the next 60 days. You will have to be very confident in your outlook to risk $11 million on a directional position with the VIX at a 5-year lows and the markets trying to break out to new highs. So does all of this guarantee that the stock market is going to move a certain way? Of course not. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, it does appear that Wall Street insiders are preparing for something. Meanwhile, the U.S. government continues to assure us that happy days are here again for the U.S. economy and that we don't have anything to worry about. The Congressional Budget Office had just released a report that contains their outlook for the next decade. The report is entitled The Budget and Economic Outlook, Fiscal Years 2013 to 2023, and if you want a good laugh, you should read it. Here are some of the things that the CBO believes will happen. The CBO believes that government revenues will more than double by the year 2023. The CBO believes that government revenue as a percentage of GDP will rise from 15% today to 19.1% in 2023. The CBO believes that unemployment rate will continually fall over the next decade. The CBO believes that the federal budget deficit will fall to just 2.4% of GDP in fiscal year 2015. The CBO believes that the federal budget deficit will be only $430 billion in 2015. The CBO believes that we will not have a single recession over the next decade. The CBO believes that inflation will stay at about 2% for the next decade. The CBO believes that the U.S. GDP will grow by a total of 67% by 2023. Wow, all of that sounds great until you go back and take a look at how CBO projections have fared in the past. In fact, Bruce Casting has gone back and looked at the numbers from the Congressional Budget Office's Budget and Economic Outlook 2003. I think you will find the differences between the CBO projections and what really happened to be very humorous. Estimated 10-year budget surplus, $5.6 trillion. Reality, a $6.6 trillion deficit, a 200% miss. Estimate for 2000 debt held by the public, $1.2 trillion, 5% of GDP. Reality, debt held by public, $11.6 trillion, a 1000% miss. Estimated fiscal 2012 GDP, $17.4 trillion. Reality, $15.8 trillion, a $1.6 trillion miss. 10%. So should we trust what the CBO is telling us now? Of course not. Instead, perhaps we should listen to some of the men that successfully warned us about the last financial crisis. Dr. Doom Mark Faber recently stated that he loves the high odds of a big-time market crash. Economist Nouriel Roubini says that we should prepare for a perfect storm. PIMCO's Bill Goss says that we are heading for a credit supernova. Nomura's Bob Jajuja believes that financial markets will experience one more high spike before collapsing by up to 50%, ladies and gentlemen. I continue to believe that the S&P 500 can trade up towards the 1575 to 1550 area, where we have so far a grand double top. I would not be surprised to see the S&P trade marginally through the 2007 all-time nominal high. The real high was of course seen over a decade ago. So much for equities as a long-term vehicle for wealth creation. A weekly close at the new all-time high would lead to the final parabolic spike up, which creates the kind of positioning extreme and leverage extreme needed to create the conditions for a 25 to 50% collapse in equities over the rest of 2013 and 2014, driven by real economy reality hitting home, and by policymaker failure, loss of faith in their system. The truth is that no matter how much money printing the Federal Reserve does, it is only a matter of time before the financial markets catch up with economic reality. The U.S. economy has been in decline for a very long time, and things just continue to get even worse. Here are just a few numbers. The percentage of the civilian labor force that is employed has fallen every single year since 2006. According to John Williams of shadowstats.com, truly accurate numbers would show that the U.S. GDP growth has actually been continuously negative all the way back to 2005. U.S. families that have a head of household that is under the age of 30 have a poverty rate of 37%. One recent survey found that nearly half of all Americans are living on the edge of financial ruin. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are more than 146 million Americans that are considered to be either poor or low income at this point. For many more statistics that demonstrate that the U.S. economy has continued to decline in recent years, please see this article. So where is this all headed? Well, after the next major financial crisis in America, things are going to get very tough. We can get a hint for how things are going to be by taking a look at what is going on over in Europe right now. Can you imagine people trampling each other for food? That is what is happening in Greece. Just check out this excerpt from a Reuters article. Hundreds of people jostled for free vegetables handed out by farmers in a symbolic protest earlier on Wednesday, trampling one man and prompting an outcry over the growing desperation created by the economic crisis. Images of people struggling to seize bags of tomatoes and leeks thrown from a truck dominated television, triggering a bout of soul-searching over the new depths of poverty in the debt-laden country. The suffering that the Greeks are experiencing right now will come to this country soon enough. So enjoy this false bubble of debt-fueled prosperity while you can. It is going to end way too soon, and after that there will be a whole lot of pain. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is going to be a whole lot of pain right here in the United States. The crisis that has been going on in Europe has not abated, and it will reach our shores, ladies and gentlemen. As Mr. William Cooper noted in his broadcast, that he had the guts to bring the American people the truth of what was happening, not only here in America, but here in the world. Unfortunately, Mr. Cooper was murdered in the year 2001 by the Apache County Sheriff's Department in the state of Arizona. The powers that be were finally fed up with his crusade in trying to bring the American people the truth. And we are going to continue with more articles in this blog, because as I said, it is an integral program and plan of the New World Order to bring about a total economic collapse here in the United States of America and in the world. And I'm going to go down. We are going to go to the next article. we are going to talk about unemployment, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States. It has been said here of recent weeks that jobless numbers are declining and that we are on, quote unquote, back to the path of prosperity. And nothing could be further from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going to go to this next article in this blog. I'm going to go down, and it says, shocking numbers that show the media is lying to you about employment in America. Did you know that the percentage of the U.S. labor force that is employed has continually been falling since 2006, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics? Did you know that the increase in the number of Americans, quote, not in the labor force, unquote, during Barack Obama's first 4 years in the White House was more than 3 times greater than the increase in the number of Americans, quote, not in the labor force, unquote, during the entire decade of the 1980s. The mainstream media would have us believe that 157,000 jobs were added to the U.S. economy in January. Based on that news, the Dow broke the 14,000 barrier for the first time since October 2007. But if you actually look at the non-seasonally adjusted numbers, the number of Americans with a job actually decreased by 1,446,000 between December and January. But nowhere in the mainstream media did you hear that the U.S. economy lost more than 1.4 million jobs between December and January. It is amazing the things that you can find out when you actually take the time to look at the hard numbers instead of just listening to the media spin. Back in 2007, more than 146 million Americans were employed. Today, only 141.6 million Americans are employed, even though our population has grown steadily since then. When the government and the media tell you that we are in a, quote, recovery, unquote, and that unemployment is lower than it was a couple of years ago, I encourage you to dig deeper. The truth is that even the government's own numbers tell us that the percentage of the U.S. labor force that is employed continues to fall, and the U.S. economy is heading into a recession. The Obama administration and the media have been lying to you about unemployment and about the true condition of our economy. After you see the numbers that I have compiled in this article, I think that you will agree with me. First of all, let's take a look at the percentage of the civilian labor force that has been employed over the past several years. These numbers come directly from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As you can see, this is a number that has been steadily falling since 2006. 2006, 63.1. 2007, 63.0. 2008, 62.2. 2009, 59.3. 2010, 58.5. 2011, 58.4. In January, only 57.9% of the civilian labor force was employed. Do the numbers above represent a positive trend or a negative trend? Even a second grader could answer that question. So how in the world can the Obama administration and the mainstream media claim that the employment picture is getting better and that we are in a, quote, recovery, unquote? But most Americans believe what they are told. It is almost as if we are in some kind of, quote, matrix, unquote, where reality is defined by the corporate-controlled propaganda that is relentlessly pumped into our brains. The only way that the government has been able to show a declining unemployment rate is by dumping massive numbers of Americans into, quote, not in the labor force, unquote, category. Just check out how the number of Americans not in the labor force has absolutely skyrocketed in recent years. 2006, 77,387,000 Americans were not in the labor force. In 2007, 78,743,000 Americans were not in the labor force. 2008, 79,501,000 Americans were not in the labor force. 2009, 81,659,000 Americans were not in the labor force. 2010, 83,941,000 Americans were not in the labor force. 2011, 86,001,000 Americans were not in the labor force. And in January, ladies and gentlemen, there were supposedly 89,868,000 Americans that were at least 16 years of age that were not in the labor force. That number has risen by more than 8 million since Barack Obama first entered the White House, and that is highly unusual because the number of Americans not in the labor force only increased by 2,518,000 during the entire decade of the 1980s. You sure can get the numbers to look more favorable if you pretend that millions upon millions of American workers simply, quote, do not want a job, unquote, any longer. The truth is that if the labor force participation rate was at the same level it was at when Barack Obama was first elected, the official unemployment rate would be well above 10%. But that wouldn't do at all, would it? 7.9% sounds much nicer. And of course, even if you do have a job, that does not mean that you're doing okay. If you can believe it, in America today, 41% of all workers make $20,000 a year or less. To me, that is a mind-blowing statistic. It would be incredibly challenging for anyone to live on $20,000 a year, much less try to support a family. If you live in Washington, D.C. or New York City and you have, quote, good job working, unquote, working for the establishment, you may not realize it, but there are tens of millions of American families that are really hurting out there. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, more than 146 million Americans are either poor or low income at this point, and most of these people actually do have jobs. For much more on the working poor in the United States, you can see this other article, 35 statistics about the working poor in America that will blow your mind. If something is not done, the middle class will continue to disappear and poverty in America will continue to explode. In a previous article, I noted that during Obama's first term, the number of Americans on food stamps increased by an average of about 11,000 per day. How bad do things have to get before people realize that we are living through a nightmare? Sadly, most Americans still have faith in the system. Most Americans are still convinced that our politicians will somehow find a way to turn things around. Most Americans will gather around their television sets this weekend and watch the Super Bowl and laugh at all the funny commercials without even thinking about how America is literally falling apart around them. But there is one group of Americans that is acutely aware of how bad things have really gotten. Small businesses have traditionally been the primary engine of job growth in this country. But right now, small business owners all over the nation are facing a tremendous crisis. Millions of small businesses are on the verge of extinction, and yet our politicians just continue to pile on more taxes, more rules, and more regulations. A recent Gallup poll found that 61% of all small business owners in America are worried about the potential cost of health care, and that an astounding 30% of all small business owners in America are not hiring and fear that they will go out of business within the next 12 months. In a previous article entitled, "We Are Witnessing the Death of Small Business in America," I detailed how small businesses in America are being systematically wiped out. Small businesses are dying all around us, and the number of new small businesses continues to decline. According to economist Tim Kaine, the following is how the decline by the number of startup jobs for 1,000 Americans breaks down by presidential administration. Bush Sr. 11.3, Clinton 11.2, Bush Jr. 10.8, Obama 7.8. Is that a good trend or a bad trend? All of this is so simple that even the family pet should be able to figure it out, and yet most Americans seem oblivious to all of this. They just keep gobbling up the mainstream media propaganda, and they just continue to go out and widely spend money. It is almost as if we didn't learn any lessons from 2008. Even while household spending in Europe has moderated, household spending in the United States continues to soar. Just check out the chart. And guess what? The infamous no money down mortgages are back. If we wait long enough, perhaps interest-only mortgages will make a comeback as well. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that time is running out. We have been living in the biggest debt bubble in the history of the world, and it is only a matter of time until it bursts. 2008 was just a hiccup compared to what is coming. Our politicians and the Federal Reserve were able to keep the house of cards from completely crashing down back then, but they are not going to be able to avert the economic horror show that is rapidly approaching. I hope that you are getting prepared. Back in 2008, millions of Americans suddenly lost their jobs, and because many of them did not have any savings, many of them suddenly lost their homes. One of the most important things that you can do to prepare for the coming crisis is to build up an emergency fund. If things suddenly go bad, you don't want to lose your house and everything that you have always worked for. In addition, anything that you can do to become more self-sufficient and more independent of the system is a good thing, because the system is failing. The years ahead are going to be much more chaotic than what we are experiencing right now. When the next crisis strikes you, you will be very thankful for the time and the energy that you put into preparing. So what are all you seeing in your own areas? Are businesses shutting down? Are people having a hard time finding good jobs? And we will, ladies and gentlemen, go back up to this article. I believe that it's important we read this. And we shall let it load up. And as he stated, we are witnessing the death of small businesses in America. Historically, small businesses have been the primary engine of new job creation in the United States. If the economy was getting healthy, we would expect to see the number of jobs at new businesses rise. Instead, we are witnessing just the opposite. We are told that the economy is supposed to be, quote, recovering, unquote, but the number of, quote, startup jobs, unquote, at new businesses has fallen for 5 years in a row. According to an analysis of the U.S. Department of Labor data performed by economist Tim Kaine, there were almost 12 startup jobs per 1,000 Americans back in the year 2006. By 2011, that figure had fallen to less than 8 startup jobs per 1,000 Americans. According to Kaine, the number of jobs in the United States at businesses that are less than 1 year old has fallen from 4.1 million in 1994 to 2.5 million in 2010. Overall, the number of new entrepreneurs and business owners has fallen by more than 50% as a percentage of the population since 1977. The United States was once known as the land of opportunity, but now that is fundamentally changing. At this point, we truly do have a crisis of entrepreneurship in this country, and that is a huge reason why America is in decline. We are witnessing the slow death of the small business in America, and that is incredibly bad news for all of us. Unfortunately, the problems that small businesses are experiencing right now have been building up for decades. The economic environment for small businesses in America has become incredibly toxic. Sadly, we can see this in the numbers. According to Kaine, the following is how the decline in the number of startup jobs per 1,000 Americans breaks down by presidential administration. Bush Sr. 11.3, Clinton 11.2, Bush Jr. 10.8, and Obama 7.8. Obviously, we are heading very much in the wrong direction. Kaine speculates about why this may be happening in his paper. There is anecdotal evidence that the U.S. policy environment has become inadvertently hostile to entrepreneurial employment. And I don't believe that, ladies and gentlemen. It is overt. The federal government is hostile to small businesses because they wish to kill competition, because the big lobbyists in Washington are their biggest political contributors. At the federal level, high taxes and higher uncertainty about taxes are undoubtedly inhibiting entrepreneurship, but to what degree is unknown. The dominant factor may be new regulations on labor. The passage of the Affordable Care Act is creating a sweeping alteration of the regulatory environment that directly changes how employers engage their workforces, and it will be some time until these changes are understood by employers or scholars. Separately, there has been a federal crackdown since 2009 by the Internal Revenue Service on U.S. employers that hire U.S. workers as independent contractors rather than employees, raising the question of mandatory benefits. New firms tend to use part-time and contract staffing rather than full-time employees during the startup stage. According to Labor Department data, the typical American today only takes home 70% of compensation as pay, while the rest is absorbed by the spiraling cost of benefits, e.g. health insurance. The dilemma for U.S. policy is that an American entrepreneur has zero tax or regulatory burden when hiring a consultant contractor who resides abroad, but the same employer is subject to paperwork, taxation, and possible IRS harassment if employing U.S.-based contractors. Finally, there has been a steady barrier erected to entrepreneurs at the local policy level. Brent Lindsay points out in his book Human Capitalism that the rise of occupational licensing is destroying startup opportunities for poor and middle-class Americans. Kane raises some very good points in his analysis. Without a doubt, small businesses in the United States are being taxed into oblivion. If you doubt this, just read this extra article. And the regulatory environment for small businesses is more suffocating than it has ever been before. Unfortunately, our politicians never seem to learn that lesson. During his first term, Obama piled on mountains of new regulations, and now that he has won a second term, he is preparing to unleash another massive wave of new regulations. But many times the worst offenders are politicians on the state and local level. There are some areas of the country, such as California, that have created absolutely nightmarish conditions for small businesses. California had the worst small business failure rate in the country in 2010. It was 69% higher than the national average. And in 2011, the state of California ranked 50th out of all 50 states in new business creation. Yet the politicians in California just continue to pile up even more regulations and new taxes. Sadly, this kind of thing is happening from coast to coast, and it is killing off hordes of small businesses. Just consider the following statistics. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the U.S. economy lost more than 220,000 small businesses during the last recession. As a share of the population, the percentage of Americans that are self-employed fell by more than 20% between 1991 and 2010. As a share of the population, the percentage of new entrepreneurs and business owners dropped by a staggering 53% between 1977 and 2010. The average pay for self-employed Americans declined by $3,721 between the years 2006 and the year 2010. So what needs to be done? Well, first of all, the tax burden and the regulatory burden on small businesses both need to be greatly reduced. Secondly, the balance of power in our nation needs to be dramatically shifted. Conservatives run around talking about the need to reduce the power of government, and liberals run around talking about the need to reduce the power of corporations. And actually, both of them are right. Our founding fathers intended to establish a republic where power would never be concentrated in the hands of just a few. That is why they tried to strictly limit the power of the federal government in the U.S. Constitution. And that is why they greatly restricted the size and scope of corporations in early America. Our founding fathers wanted to empower individual citizens and small businesses. They never intended for us to have a system where big government and big corporations dominate everything and crush the, quote, little guy, unquote, at every opportunity. Even as we witness the death of small business in America, corporations are absolutely thriving. The following chart shows corporate profits after tax have exploded to new record highs in recent years. And you can see this charts, ladies and gentlemen, how much corporations, large corporations, have profited over the years, and they continue to profit under Barack Hussein Obama, the man who claims to be against the very things that he campaigned on. So has this been good for workers? No, it is not translated into more jobs and higher wages. In fact, wages and salaries as a percentage of GDP are now at an all-time low. Then that is why it is imperative that we change the rules of the game so that the balance of power is shifted back in the direction of individual citizens and small businesses. We desperately need to turn back to the principles that this nation was founded upon. If nothing is done, these trends are going to get even worse. Barack Obama certainly has no plans to reduce the size and power of the government. Since he was elected, an average of 100 new federal employees have been added to the government payroll every single day. In the 1,420 days since he took the oath of office, the federal government has daily hired, on average, 101 new employees. Every day, 7 days a week, all 202 weeks, that makes 143,000 more federal workers than when Obama talked forever on that cold day in January of 2009. And if nothing is done, the monolithic predator corporations that dominate our economy will just get even larger and even more powerful. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands more small businesses will close up shop all over the country. Unfortunately, most Americans seem totally apathetic about these issues. They seem content to wear leggings, watch Honey Boo Boo on television, and let our government and corporate overlords run everything. Most of them have even been brainwashed into believing that this is the American way of doing things. So where do we go from here? Well, this nation will probably continue to keep doing the same things that it has been doing, and will continue to get the same results. The death of small business in America is happening right in front of our eyes, and everybody can see it happening, but very few people, ladies and gentlemen, are doing anything to stop it. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to put the politics aside, and you need to start preparing yourselves for the eventual collapse of this nation. And it is a certainty, ladies and gentlemen, that America will collapse, because it is, as Mr. Cooper stated in his broadcast and the information in this blog, an impossibility, realistically or logically, to repay the debts that we owe. And correctly and legally, the international bankers that run this world will foreclose on the debts of the United States government. And since the federal government has nothing of intrinsic value to offer as repayment, they will confiscate the property of the American people. That means your home, that means your car, that means your guns, ladies and gentlemen. That is why they are trying so desperately to disarm the American people, so we have no way of fighting back once the foreclosure begins and the great sell-off of America begins. They wish to leave the American people helpless. They wish to leave us indentured servants and slaves in the New World Order. You need to convert your worthless Federal Reserve notes, as I have done, into some silver and gold. It makes no difference how much you are able to afford to buy. Having some is better than having nothing, ladies and gentlemen. You need to go to the grocery store and you need to buy extra food whenever you can. You need to start storing it up. You need to buy yourself a radio. You need to buy yourself weapons, as I have mentioned on many broadcasts. As a matter of fact, I was reading another article about a very large gun show in California, and they were asking the buyers why they were buying so many weapons and they were buying so much ammunition. They said, quote, "We are preparing for the next revolution, unquote. And that is a very sad and very scary statement to be making in the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen. The Department of Homeland Security has once again ordered hundreds of millions of rounds of ammunition. Today in an article I read, they had again put in an order for 2.6 million more rounds of ammunition. Why do they need all of this ammunition, ladies and gentlemen? A thinking person and a logically inclined person can come to only one conclusion. They intend to use this ammunition, ladies and gentlemen. They intend to use it on the American people. There is urban combat warfare training taking place right now all across this land. More recently in Miami and in Texas. They are preparing for massive civil unrest. And cutting taxes and cutting spending, ladies and gentlemen, is a non-solution. Our constitutional money was stolen from us 100 years ago in the year 1913. The only way, as Mr. Cooper stated, is to return ourselves to sound money. We will never solve our economic problems as long as the Federal Reserve System continues to operate in this nation. And if you continue to ignore it, I guarantee you in the next 5 years, you will be paying $10 a gallon for gasoline, ladies and gentlemen. And how will somebody making $9 an hour be able to afford to pay for $10 gasoline? There is no logical way to live when inflation runs that rampant. And as I said, if you do not believe me, or you do not believe the information presented here tonight, go to the grocery store, track what you're spending, and tell me that the economy is getting better. Are your wages rising as fast as the rate of inflation? I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, they are not. The average median salary, take-home income for a man and woman working today is around $50,000. That has dropped almost $3,000 in recent years. Americans have less money to spend. They have less disposable income which to participate in the American economy. I myself am testament to that fact. After I pay my bills and buy food, I am broke. I cannot go out to eat. I can't go to the bar and spend some money or take my wife out and have fun. We are living not even paycheck to paycheck anymore, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm but one example of the millions of Americans that are living the same way. And of course there are people that are way worse off than me. One thing that he left out in his blog about the unemployment rate, the federal government, after you stop receiving an unemployment check, whether you have a job or not, you are not counted among those that are unemployed. The unemployment rate in the United States, since the days of the first Great Depression, has always been at least a quarter of the population, and it is getting worse and worse and worse, ladies and gentlemen. When is it going to hit home to all of you? When you suddenly lose your job? Your business? How many businesses are closing in your cities, your communities? How many neighbors do you know that have lost their home? They will have you that the housing market is on the upswing. I submit to you that the reason that the housing market is on the upswing is because there has been massive building permits applied for all over the United States, not for single individual family homes, but for apartment complexes, because people are being warehoused like rats in a cage. Do you like paying $55,000 for a brand new pickup truck? 20 years ago you could have bought a home for that price. After you buy that pickup and you're done paying the interest on it, it costs you around $70,000. And when you're done finally paying for it all, you have to go buy another one because it has deteriorated to the point where it is of no use. It's designed that way, ladies and gentlemen, to keep you in perpetual debt. William Shakespeare had a very interesting quote. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. Do not forget, stay out of debt. Think twice and take this good advice from me. Guard thy own solvency. And there is just one other thing that you ought to do. To thine own self be true. Unquote. Stop playing the banker's games, ladies and gentlemen. Read your Constitution. It's spelled out in there quite clearly what constitutional money is. And educate your neighbors and your friends. If we do not do something to stop this massive wave of debt that is taking over the United States, we will be a bankrupt third world banana republic, beholden to those that hold the debt and the United Nations. Thank you, good night, and we'll see you again.